So our next speaker is going to talk about a universal language for robotics. Now, technology speaks many languages, as humans do. Tech uses 0 and 1, as we use sounds, but words have different meanings from interface to interface and from language to language. The communication between different interfaces relies on translations unless the masses will adopt a universal communication protocol. Now, creating an interface standard for robots mimics the way we adopt English as a universal language. As robots start to be more intelligent, they start communicating in more complex ways. The speed we do things buys precious time, and gaps in communication is a major wastage. Now, Karina is a well-known figure in the tech industry, having participated in all Dev Talks since 2015, including Dev Talks Juniors, and on average speaks at over 50 events per year. Having been recognized for her contribution with the Trust of the Audience Award in 2016. She's been working as a lead developer and sales engineer for the last 12 years. She's a strategic advisor for Global Women in Tech. Karina has a master's degree in applied informatics in economics and geospatial technology. Head of Planning and Accounting of Public Investment Branch of the Ministry of Economics, and Head Engineer Programmer at the Administration of Special Communication and Information of the Federal Protection Services. So, without further ado, I give you Karina.
I know it's pretty late and we are all quite tired, so I will try to be quick because I think this stage is getting late and we will have one more amazing speaker on this stage after me. So, my talk is about a universal language for robotics. And this is especially for Dev Talks Cluj. It's the first time for this talk, so hope it will run well. You heard this long speech about who am I, so I will not repeat it. It's just global woman in tech. Try to encourage girls to be more in tech. Please try to follow me on Twitter, LinkedIn. There are always lots of useful information, and also for guys, lots of helpful articles. So there are some facts about me, and you can find me on the web at karinapopova.me. Twitter handle is, you can see it here. And yeah, everything was told about myself. So, building a robot is actually pretty hard, because you need to develop a really wide skill set that includes prototyping, real-time coding, mechanical design, and also a strong understanding of microcontrollers. You all need this to develop a robot. But at the same time, nowadays, it seems like a perfect hobby for many people, especially with all these Lego kits available on the market. The main thing is that when you usually start with robots, you're going to fail because you can't apply just and have this skill set already. So what I want to encourage you is just, even if you fail, please continue, and because I believe that robots is our future. So how to start? You have to pick a robot kit. There are quite lots of them nowadays, starting from let's say a playground as Lego and finish very professional ones. And if you learn it very detailed, you will automatically know where to go next. If you start with a simple kit, you will easily move to a more advanced one. Then you have to pick a similar project, because you don't need to invent a wheel, because nowadays we have so many projects online. You just need to Google one of do-it-yourself robot and just play around with it, because after this you will need to finish a project, and this is the most important part, because you have to challenge yourself and do the moment when you've done with a simple version, you have to do it more advanced, because only when you being determined and finish the project, you can actually understand all these connections between sensor, brain, actuator, and it's all about it. The more advanced will be your project, the better you will understand the level of complexity of the brain part of the robot, which is actually the main part. So, when I'm thinking about universal language, or we also think maybe about a universal operating system for robots. Maybe do you know any systems? Don't be shy. Okay, the question, have you ever done any projects connected to robotics? Oh yeah, Lego Mindstorm. And this is a perfect example, and I would advise to everyone to do it, because it's lots of fun, and at the end you have something what is work and what can work and bring some useful things in your life. So the hard part is actually not to connect all these elements, because you can also pick up an Arduino, Raspberry Pi, but the main part is that all these elements have to communicate. But it's not only enough to make a robot which can move straight forward, you also have to have a total control over all functionality of your robot. And for this you need a system. And basically this system is a collection of different tools and libraries. And why do we need this system? Because create a general purpose robot is much harder rather than create a robot which has a simple purpose. Because robots in general, they don't understand, they have some dilemmas. So if they have an algorithm how to behave in the specific situations, they would behave like this. But if they should be a general purpose, they don't know how to react sometimes. And dealing with all the variations, what can happen with a robot in one specific environment, it's very hard. Not even a single company or laboratory or university can actually create a fully general purpose robot. Because all robots will have problems with different instances of tasks and environment. For example, as you see here, a simple task for a human, which is just to press that I'm not a robot, seems like it's going to be very complicated for a robot to press this button and to confirm that he is not a robot, right? So even in simple situations, humans would behave, robots wouldn't know what to do. So there are some systems, and I would just quickly tell you about the robot operating system, which was created in 2007. And it's actually a collaborative software development platform. A lot of different companies and institutions develop different parts. For example, some company is particularly focused only on control of a specific sensor or the mapping the environment. Or there are even companies who works only on focused on what is the right way to write documentation, and tutorials. So, and this system is getting really big right now, and it's very easy to use it. The main philosophy of it is that you can actually, it's a peer-to-peer, so programs can communicate over a defined API. It's also distributed, so the programs can run on multiple computers. What is more interesting for us is that it's a multilingual, so which means that you can write your program in any language. And of course, it's lightweight, it's always cool and free and open source. So basically, this slide would like to summarize what do we know so far about robots. We know that they really, like 90% of them, like Linux, and nowadays there start to be some of them for Microsoft. We will also talk about it a bit later. Also the part that something may fail, but it should not fail completely, which means that if robot has some sensors on him and the one sensor will not work, the robot should be still able to complete the task. So, yeah, open source we talk about. Also that it's maintained by many people, and when many people focus on development, it's always good and it's always possible to continue the development. So everything is modular, means that in one robot we can have Arduino, Raspberry Pi, even your smartphone can be helpful. Sensors, yeah, robots really need to have lots of sensors, and they to interact with the environment. Lego is one of the maybe a funny fact, but they really get more and more powerful with every year, and maybe it will be one of the first company who will really present a robot for a society, let's say. And everything is different, and this is where we come to languages that so many different languages are used, and there is no one standardization. So this presentation, I would like to show you some top popular programming languages for robotics. And I pick up 10 of them. It's only my own, let's say, opinion. It's not, they're not ranked. They're kind of ranked, but it's based on my own experience. And so just would like to show you, because every language has their own advantages and disadvantages. So of course we can start with BASIC and Pascal. So BASIC is actually, you know, it's abbreviation for beginners all-purpose symbolic instruction code. And Pascal is another, let's say, advanced step to be more involved with industrial languages. And these languages are useful to learn if you going to do a lot of low-level coding, or if you want to become familiar with some industrial languages. The next language is these industrial languages, which is not so commonly known, but there are about 1,000 of them, and for each company nowadays use a different language. And it's a big problem for a technician who would work for one company and then he would rather move to another robotic company. He would need to learn basically a new language, which people sometimes stuck for years at one company just because it's lots of work. And you just need to know that these languages exist, and you will probably use them only if you're going to work on one of the manufacturers. The next language is Lisp. It's one of the oldest languages, older only Fortran for 1 year. And surprisingly, this language is still really important because it does job when it's connects to artificial intelligence programming. So this is the main language for it. Also, hardware description languages. It's basically a programming way of describing electronics. So they would use to help with producing the chips without actually having them. And the best thing about them is that you have to know that they exist, and you have to have at least one time a look at it, because they're very different from all programming languages we know. And it's just for your self-development. It's very interesting, I would advise. Another language is assembly, and it's actually programmed at the level of ones and zeros, and for many, many years it was for all, has been used for all lower level electronics. But nowadays, because we have Arduino and Raspberry Pi, and they all come already with another languages, so it seems like it's not going to be a thing anymore in the future. But still, for some research and government organizations, it's one of the main language. Number 5 is MATLAB. And there are people who really done the whole robotic system just in MATLAB, because it's perfect for controlling, for analyzing the data, and also for producing the useful graphs where you can see all the data coming in real time, producing the big haystack of data. And then, of course, if someone gonna use the Microsoft Robotics Developer Studio, then the only language, the primary language, will be C#. And because it's kind of a thing, upcoming thing, so it gets number 4. Yes, Java. Java is also a language for robotics, mainly because in many countries and universities, the students learn Java in there. So they try to use this language, as though it's pretty hard to understand what is going on in the background. And as I told you at the beginning, it's very important to understand the brain or how the robot works. So actually, whenever you hear that you can use Java, you always have this small sentence afterwards that only if you already have experience with robots. And in theory, you can use it on many machines, but sometimes because of runtime, it always causes problems. Next language is Python, and it's one of the most popular languages nowadays because it's supports by some of the electronics like Raspberry Pi out of the box. So you can immediately start. It's also perfect for machine learning and artificial intelligence, and it's also helpful when you do a web development. So it's one of the, in recent years, it's become one of the main language for robotics. And also because the system I showed you before, the robotic operational system, it's one of the primary language. And it's just so many free libraries which you can easily use and start programming with it. So it's one of the most popular language, and many people think that it will be the one which will survive for robotics. But at the same moment, C and C++ are still big, and mainly because of real-time performance. Yes, it's pretty hard to program. It has lots of lines, of course, but when the question of performance appears, it's one of the best. And many programmers would also tell you that this language is going to be the one. So at the end, when we ask the question, so which of these languages is going to be the one for robots, we understand that it all depends on what your robot needs. And particularly, in whatever language you would choose, you need to have a good support for particular hardware of your robot. You also need good real-time characteristics and also support for the networks and protocols. And just as example, you have to pick the right environment for your tasks. And sometimes it looks like this, that you have to use all these languages just to program one robot. Because for different functions, as for example, control, you need a MATLAB. For image and signal processing, you would use Python or Java. Yeah, and for some extensions, you would also use Lua or Lisp. So it's pretty complicated to choose just one language. Of course, when we talk about languages, and there are many conversations if we should have one specific language, we have always to talk about humans, morals, and machines, because nowadays we have so many different robots already around us, which works in healthcare and military, and all the decisions which they make every day can help or harm. And it's always clear why the machine does something, because it was pre-programmed by a specific person who designed the set of the rules. And in some situations, they're just not able to do the right decision. For example, as on this picture, you see that if the car goes straight, it would kill 2 people and 1 child. And if it would go on the left, it would kill one person and 1 kid and 1 animal. So if there is a predefined set of rules, what robot would do, it would just go on the left. But if you would ask a human in this situation, many humans would answer that they would just put a car aside of the road and crash the car rather than crash into people. And robots, they just sometimes don't have this vision and ethics what the people have, because ethical decision for robots is very challenging. And the logical languages, they always have troubles when it's coming to hypotheses and when they need to resolve certain dilemmas. Because harm is wrong in every situation, even if leads to the good. For example, if it kills less people, as a humans, you still understand that it's not acceptable. And we have to transfer it all to the robotics. And at the end, so what is the main language? if you would ask electronic engineers, they will give you a completely different answer from the robotic technicians. If you would ask computer vision programmers, they would give you a completely different answers rather than cognitive robotics. And everyone would disagree with each other, and they all would answer, it depends, but we know that it's kind of useless answer, but at the same moment, if we would make it a bit wider and say it depends on the functionality, it depends on the environment, and if we just answer all these questions, it would be pretty easy for you to choose the right tool, right language. And what I would like to say is that it's rather more important for all of us to learn more languages. You don't need to know it professionally, but you need to create kind of a programming mindset for yourself. And in the future, it will definitely help you to talk with robots, to understand them, and to program them. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for that talk, Karina. Do we have any questions from the audience? Here we go.
What made you go to BASIC? Like the first language that we're going to talk about is BASIC and Pascal.
Because usually when I start this talk and I ask if there are only programmers, there are lots of people who would raise their hands and say they never program in their life. And I think for low-level development, it's just a simple understanding. And many low-level robots start with just people who never tried anything, but they buy a Lego set and they just want to play around with it. And then BASIC is one of the, like, a start point, I would say. What?
Add logo. Logo is a language.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, maybe number 11.
Like 0.90, using logo Scratch. Those are good enough to code the robot anytime.
Yeah. But as I told, there is 1,500 different languages which has been already used for different robots, which creates a complete mess on the market and understanding. So I hope this talk will also encourage people to use more, let's say, mainstream languages.
Any more questions from the audience?
No? Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Karina.